You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Friday, the 20th of September. The 49ers are looking to bounce back from a loss, but they'll be doing it very shorthanded. Joining me, as always, on a Friday to discuss some key matchups in this game is Kyle Posey of Niners Nation. KP, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Last time we spoke, it was Friday the 13th, right? So it was always going to get a little wonky there. So I think the 49ers, and we're going to talk about this, in a good spot to bounce back, even though they are going to be shorthanded.
Yeah, and we are going to talk about the injury updates that just came in a couple minutes ago before we went live. So joining me to discuss that is Desi. How you doing today, Desi?
Hey, happy Friday, guys. And yeah, Kyle, just on top of what you were saying about Friday the 13th, it was a full moon this week too. And it felt like it.
I don't know if that's good or bad for the
right.
Last week wasn't great. So
I would say it's bad because I feel like each day of the full moon, we got a different report of another person out. It was definitely a wonky week. So yeah.
Only one way to go from there.
That's right.
All right, well, let's get down this list of injuries for the 49ers. We have Deebo Samuel listed as out for this game. Of course, we kind of knew that early on in the week. He was deemed to be missing the next couple of weeks with a calf strain. George Kittle entered the injury report kind of late in the week. It was Thursday when he entered it with some hamstring tightness. He wasn't out there for practice today, so he's listed as doubtful. And then Mooney Ward, Nick Bosa also entered kind of late this week, but they are questionable for this game. I imagine they're going to play. And then we got Talanoa Hufanga, who all signs point to him playing. So that's the silver lining in all of this. And so let's just talk about Hufanga here, Desi, if you don't mind. The thing, I'm obviously excited about Hufanga returning. Should we be concerned about his first game being back? Being on a turf field, how might that impact him in this one?
Gosh, Steph, that's a great question. I mean, obviously, I would think that their medical staff is aware of that, and they have thought that through and taken it into consideration as they allow him to come back. I don't expect him to take, full reps. I think this is going to be, he's going to come out, lots of energy. He's going to miss it. You're going to feel it. It's going to be great. And then he's probably going to pucker out, right? I mean, even, the silverback needed IVs and, he kind of puttered at the end of the games, and he's 2 games in now. This is Huff's first game in 10 months. So, I wouldn't put too much expectations on him. I would expect him to be a rotating player, but it is great news to have him coming back and hopeful that, all is well for him. I'm excited. I think he's a great player, and what better time to come back than right now.
Is this going to be something that he's eased in over the course of the next month where, hey, we see 15 to 20 snaps one week, we see 30 to 40 the next week, and maybe a month from now, that's when he's revved up fully to the whole 60 full game snap count?
That's a great question. And I think historically, when people or players are cleared for play in Shanahan's team, Shanahan's going to play them the way that he wants to play them. And so that's kind of been as fans, we're all gripping our hands but this is a different year, right? We have Brandon Staley. We have a different defensive coordinator. We have some other folks that maybe can be a buffer to that. And so again, I'm hopeful that yes, they will be able to rotate him in and ease him in versus just, hey, you're ready to play. We're going to throw you in there and sink or swim, baby, especially in light of the number of players that we're already starting to see on the questionable or out list.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to having Hufanga back, but probably shouldn't expect a whole lot from him in his first game back. So I think it would be smart for the 49ers to ease him in, see how it goes, see how it looks. Now, typically, I know it's different for every player, but typically, from your experience seeing this, how long does it usually take an athlete to return to true performance of what they're kind of used to looking like after an injury like this?
I mean, in general, 9 to 12 months. It depends on the sport, depends on the athlete. Of course, he is high level, right? So he's got all the resources that he possibly, it's not like some college level guy who's limited on resources. This guy has every single possible massage therapist, physical therapist, personal trainer, all these, access to different personnel that can help him bounce back quickly. So I think the timing is right along where he should be. And this, I don't think, is a concern in terms of just timeline, right? I would expect him to be back around this part of his recovery.
All right. Well, I know we're going to be missing some guys out there, but still should be some guys who could help the 49ers win this game. And we'll be talking about some favorable matchups for the 49ers in this one. But thank you, Desi, for joining and giving us some insight on Hufunga's injury here.
Well, I have one more silver lining.
Give it to us.
The only thing worse than our injury report is the Rams injury report.
Yes.
And if you want that rundown, I have the data right here. Would you like me to?
Please, yes, please do.
Okay, so on their injured reserve list is Puka Nacua with a PCL injury, Jonah Jackson with a shoulder injury, so those are completely out. You also have Davis Allen, their tight end, Joshua Carty, their kicker. Cooper Kupp, of course, is out with the ankle. Limited yesterday was Kobe Durant, and Bobby Brown is limited. They also have their safety, John Johnson, the third, out, and Steve Avila, their guard, MCL repair. He had surgery the other day. So guess what? There's a lot of people on their O-line that is struggling, so it might be a Jordan Mason game. So just going to throw that out there. All right. I love positivity. So, this could be a game where they decide, hey, George, sit this one out. It might just be kind of one of those preseason looking-esque games.
We're definitely on the same page when it comes to Jordan Mason, so can't wait to talk about him in today's show. But thank you for that rundown, Desi, because I actually hadn't looked at the Rams. I don't think they put out their injury report for the game yet, so thank you for providing that for us. And yes, obviously they're hurting more than the 49ers are. So, and thanks for joining us as always on these preview shows.
All right. Happy Friday, guys. Take care.
Yes. Thank you. All right. So let's look at I always start with like the not so favorable matchups. I have to be honest with you, KP. It was kind of hard to find like not so favorable matchups for the 49ers in this game, just given how banged up the Rams are right now. But let's take a quick look at their offense. I mean, obviously missing two of their starting wide receivers. You got Demarcus Robinson, you got Jordan Whittington, who I've heard a lot of good things about. So I think they're going to try to involve him in this game. They also have Tyler Johnson. Their offensive line is a bunch of, guys that are not as experienced as their starters would have been. You got Alaric Jackson, you got Logan Bruss, Bo Limmer, the rookie, Kevin Dotson, and Rob Havenstein, and their tight end, Colby Parkinson, of course, Kyron Williams, and Matthew Stafford. So for me, KP, I would say like the only not so favorable for the 49ers, you could say, would be Matthew Stafford. I know like he's struggling, and so it's not so much a not so favorable that's rooted in fact or any stats from this season so far, but it's still Matthew Stafford, right? Like I have a ton of respect for him as a quarterback. I still think he's the best quarterback in the NFC. If there's anyone who can will the Rams to a win, I think it would be driven by Matthew Stafford and what he could possibly do. So that's just my only, I guess, not so favorable potentially for the 49ers.
I think the world of Stafford. Like he's a top 5 quarterback to me. And I think obviously the 49ers are catching the Rams at a fortunate time, not having to go against Stafford when he has Nacua, when he has Cooper Kupp, and when he has an offensive line with more than one starter. So when he doesn't have those players, as we saw last week, it's just a struggle for them, like as it would be for anybody else. They're going to struggle to protect him, to keep him upright. And because of that, you could see it in the game last week where, hey, he's just getting rid of the ball quicker than he wants to. And a lot of his guys aren't separating the way that the all-pro wide receivers that he had would. So there's no doubt like Stafford, we have history of him torching the 49ers, but that was with a much healthier roster. So I do agree that I would never doubt Stafford. I would not put it past him to go off, even if he has to throw to Tyler Johnson 10 times. But like the odds are just against that, knowing, especially seeing them struggle to score against the Cardinals defense that, like when you watched them the week before against the Bills, especially in the second half, the Cardinals like allowed the Bills, and that was really only Josh Allen to do whatever he wanted. So I would imagine that the Rams are going to be just a little bit handicapped here.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point that I think a large part of the game plan for the Rams is going to be to get the ball out quickly, just knowing the state of their offensive line right now. Stafford's time to throw at the moment through 2 games is 2.83, so not the fastest, but not the slowest, but we know he definitely could speed it up in this game if that's part of the game plan, which I'm definitely expecting. So that's definitely one for me to be on the lookout for. And another thing that has kind of been not so great for the 49ers is their third down defense. So for me, if that kind of rears its ugly head again, that's something I would be concerned with. Like, you can't give an opposing team, especially one like the Rams, who have no reason to be in this game to begin with, you can't give them a chance. So you can't give them a breath of life, right? So that's what these third downs have been doing, in my opinion. And if you look at the stats here, third down conversion rate allowed, the 49ers are allowing 59.1%. That is 31st in the NFL. In 3rd and 7+ yard situations, they are allowing 72.7 of those to be converted. That is the worst in the league. Third down success rate is 31st. Third and long success rate, 32nd. So it hasn't been great, and it can't continue to be something they struggle with in this game. If there's any game to kind of get that right, it would be this one.
100%. And like when we're talking about Stafford, right, and the lack of receivers that he has, I think this is a prime opportunity and we saw it only on a handful of plays, and it was actually fewer than a handful of plays, 3 or 4, for the 49ers and Nick Storms especially, to bust out that dime package, right, to get your best players on the field. And it looked like he was comfortable. The 49ers at least were at their best when they had Renardo Green on the field, and he was with Isaac Yiadom, and he was with, obviously, Deombra Lenore. That will matter for Charvarius Ward, who's questionable right now. So hopefully Mooney's able to play. It sounded like it's not a serious injury because Sorensen said, hey, we're just like being, cautionary injury. We're going to hold him out on Thursday. So he's listed as questionable. But even on the third down plays, it was really just bust. Like on one play, Yiadom tried to go over a rub route. There was one play where he's just running down the seam with a tight end, and he's running parallel with him instead of eliminating the space. So like there were easily fixable plays, because on the other runs where, like, for example, Renardo Green, he's with Justin Jefferson, and you're able to use the safety, and you're able to allot your better cornerbacks against a lesser receiver. So they're not going to have to double anybody on the Rams. And maybe we see an uptick in pressures, right, and pressure rate from the 49ers, which would be nice because so far, this is a unit that we're expecting to be a top 10 unit, and they haven't gone there yet, or they haven't performed like one yet. But again, it's a banged up offensive line. Rob Haven seemed like the one starter that's familiar. What does he struggle with? Athleticism. What do the 49ers have? Athleticism. So Nick Bosa, Leonard Floyd, like those two are in a prime that should have some prime opportunities this week. And I also think it's a good opportunity for Gross Matos. So this is the second game for him. And last week, he's just still getting his legs underneath him. Hadn't played football in over a month. So like this, I think we should see a better showing from him this week too.
Yeah, definitely want to talk more about the 49ers defensive line, because I do see that as a favorable matchup in this one. And just to go back to the third down conversation, the one good thing here is that the Rams offense is currently 25th in third down conversion rate, just a little over 30%. So there's a reason to believe the 49ers defense can look improved in that area on Sunday. I'm not taking any excuses if they do struggle with that on Sunday. Let's take a quick halftime break here to remind you guys to download the Locker app. Week 3 is upon us, so make sure you download the Locker app today to get your prop bets in for a chance at some cash. Who doesn't love some extra money? I know I do. That's why if you use the code WIN, they'll match your first deposit up to $100. The link to download the Locker app is in the description of this video. For the audio listeners, it will be in the description of this podcast. All right. Let's take a look at some of these favorable matchups. Whoops, sorry. All right, so favorable for the 49ers, as we were just talking about, this 49ers defensive line, there's really no excuse for them to have a breakout game against this Rams offensive line. The 49ers defensive line ranks 12th in pass block win rate, 11th in pressure percentage, and 12th in sacks per pass attempt. If you look at the Rams offensive line through 2 weeks, they rank 23rd in pass block win rate, 30th in pressure percentage given up, and 31st in QB hits given up. And so, again, we talked about it. Like, I do think the 49ers game plan will be to get the ball out quickly for Stafford, but I still think there's going to be opportunities for the 49ers to get loose in this game. Again, there's just like no excuse for them to not have at least like 2-3 sacks in this game.
Yeah, and this is where the coverage should make the defensive line look, I don't want to say better than they are, but more along the unit that we saw they would be to begin the season. So, for example, when you talk about the Rams struggling on third down, who is Stafford going to throw to when it's 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8? Like, he doesn't have that target that he's used to throwing to. So that's where maybe a Hargrave has, a coming out party, and because he's been a little suspect to start the year. And that's the guy that they paid a ton of money to. That's the guy that they wanted to be, and not far from a complimentary guy, right? He's making money to be a star, so they need him to perform up to those expectations. I do wonder if we see an uptick in Gross Matos, his snap count, so they can get Bosa, Floyd on one side, and then Gross Matos can be that Charles Omenihu type who's going to be inside as a third rusher and take advantage of his athleticism against slower guards. And Dotson, Bruss, like those guys are nowhere near on this athletic plane as Gross Matos. So that's the guy who's going to have a big game for sure.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense with the left side being the most, I think, vulnerable for the Rams. Let me ask you about Hargrave, though, because like I have seen a bit of him, these last couple weeks. It has been disappointing. Like, what is it like from your standpoint watching him? Is it an effort thing? Is it something that opposing offensive lines are doing to kind of take him out of the game? Like, is he getting double teamed a lot? Like, what are you kind of seeing? Is this something that is correctable? And it feels like you feel like this is the kind of game where like he could get loose in this one, right?
Yeah, I don't know. So during the offseason, he said he had to improve his conditioning, but through 2 games, he's played 62% of the snaps. So he's not playing a ton. And I mean, generally speaking, like defensive linemen, they're playing between 70, like Bosa's obviously an outlier. He's closer to 80, but he's not playing enough and he's not producing. So he only has 2 quarterback pressures per NFL Pro. He only has 4 tackles. Obviously, those are all stops, but he's a defensive lineman, so like they better be stops. So you're making plays along the line of scrimmage. He's not getting after the quarterback. I don't think he's winning his one-on-ones like he was last year. And maybe it's just a slow start for him. Maybe we look back a month from now, like, remember we were talking about Hargrave? Now he has 4 sacks, but those aren't happening right now. And for whatever reason, he's just not winning his one-on-ones. I don't want to say he doesn't have the same level of explosiveness as he did last year, but like right now through 2 games, that burst, right, that initial quickness is not there.
Yeah, that definitely has been concerning, but we're kind of projecting this could be a get-right game for the defensive line for Hargrave. I do have a question here from Bobby. He says, Kyle, do you think the Niners should gamble more on press man blitzing with the Rams being banged up and not giving Stafford that extra second to pass?
So I say yes to press, right? Get in their face, make the wide receivers prove that they can separate. But I would be terrified of blitzing Stafford. Like, that's just a guy who's diced up the blitz. And he even at this age, he can still be enough of an athlete to just hold the ball as long as he needs to, put the ball wherever he wants to. And that's how you get those explosive plays. And that's how you kind of bail the Rams out in a sense. So I would be more aggressive as far as getting in the wide receivers' faces. And I do think the 49ers coverage to like their cornerbacks are far superior in this game. Like when Steph says there are no excuses, there are absolutely no excuses for assuming a healthy Mooney, Deommodore Lenoir, who has been fantastic through 2 weeks. And then Isaac Yiadom, like he gave up a couple of those third downs, but I think he's far from a bad player. I had somebody talking about like he should be benched for Renardo Green. I think Yiadom is fine, and he's closer to good, above average, that territory. So yes, I would be aggressive with those guys, only in the sense of coverage. It just seems like Nick Sorensen's comfortable with rushing forward. I don't know if that's Shanahan. I don't know if he says, hey, we were on the other end of the spectrum last year with Wilkes because on third downs they were blitzing nonstop. And this year, Sorensen just isn't blitzing at all. So maybe that's not even an option. But they can certainly do a better job of mixing up looks and changing up their coverages. And when they did last week against the Vikings, when they did get in the faces of the wide receivers, I know everybody's going to think about that 97-yarder, but for the most part, they did a good job against the Vikings.
Yeah, and Vader 49er, mentions that there were some adjustments in the second half because the stunts weren't working in the first half. So, yeah, and definitely it's going to be a learning experience, I think, all season for Nick Sorensen. I think we're going to see some times where some things aren't working. What we're looking for with Sorensen is like, can he adjust? What does he adjust to? How quickly can he adjust? All those things, right? We know there's going to be some, growing pains.
It's his second game as a coordinator.
Exactly. But you know how people are. Like, I remember these exact same conversations with Saleh, D'Amico, when they were, people were trying to fire them like after just a few games, So I think also I've seen a lot of people mention, like keep that same energy you guys had for Steve Wilkes. Steve Wilkes, I mean, that was several weeks in the making of I think the fan frustration and internal coaching frustration as well. Getting to that point, I think we're going to give Sorensen at least a few more weeks before we make any definitive statements. So,
do you remember the Rams in week 2 last year? In the first half, they went up and down the field on the 49ers. Like, it was easy. And yes, like the Vikings did that last week, and Fred Warner bailed them out a bit. But again, like, we're talking about a guy who's been in football for over a decade, as opposed to a guy who has been around, but he's never called plays, and he's still trying to figure out the personnel. So I don't think it's fair at all to say, hey, we're going to pull the plug on Sorensen, or Sorensen sucks, which naturally you're going to see overreactions every day from about every player from fans. But he's going to take time to figure out the personnel. He needs to figure out who can do what. He needs to get a guy like they invested in Gross Matos to be that third rusher, has not had him yet. So it's going to take a lot of time for him to figure out what they can do up front. And again, I think that as the defensive line gets their legs underneath them, this unit will be fine. But I would feel good about the defense because the secondary and because they are so good at cornerback that they'll be able to they're going to be able to hide a lot of the defensive line issues until Sorensen gets them right.
Now, what are you kind of expecting from the safeties in this game? Because I think, Jair Brown obviously had, the play that everyone kind of looks at, the 97-yard touchdown last week wasn't his greatest moment. This week, I still see that it will be George Odom probably splitting time, or maybe even Mustafa splitting time with Hufanga in this game, and we'll continue to see Jair Brown starting and out there. Right.
I think Malik's going to play quite a bit, actually. So Odom ended up starting, but as the game went along, you can kind of see that Mustafa just looks more comfortable playing this plan. Sorry about that. So as the game went along, Mustafa played more snaps. Like, he's a rookie, so he's going to take some time, but like, he's an enforcer. Like, you can tell he plays with a style that Odom does not. There was one play where he's coming down against the run, play's pretty much over. Mustafa just kind of shoulder checks the offensive lineman, sends him off his feet. Like, that's what you want in a safety. I would imagine Hufanga's gonna. I don't know how much he is gonna play. When Desi had a good point. So like, when he's not going to be active to be on the bench, right? Like, he's going to play. So if anything, we're going to see Malik, we're going to see Talanoa, and we're going to see Jair on the field all at the same time. Like, to me, that is when the 49ers will be at their best. And the good news is the Rams run a ton of 11 personnel, or they're going to be in personnel where they're going to have extra wide receivers on the field. So that will allow Sorensen to go. Maybe Malik is the dime linebacker. Maybe Talanoa is the dime linebacker next to Fred. And then that's where you can have the safeties, where Jair Brown, to me, again, I know he gave up a 97-yarder last week. He's at his best when he's playing that deep center field role. And then you can use Mustafa and Talanoa Hufanga underneath. And again, like, they can ignore the guys on the outside. They really don't have to worry about them, so they can protect the middle. a healthy Talanoa is just 10 worlds better than the safety play that's been on it. He's going to take a lot off Jair Brown's plate too. So we haven't seen those two play together. I think they're going to be able to feed off each other. We're going to see Hufanga's instincts kind of come out into play. They're obviously people will remember some of his missed tackles, but he makes up and he's able to hide so many things and make plays around the line of scrimmage that the 49ers just haven't had yet. So it's going to be another notch in the defensive line.
Man, if they could get three of those guys on the field at the same time, Mustafa, Brown, Hufanga, I would love to see Mustafa close to the line. I think that's where he's best. So it'll be interesting. We could probably see some different looks in this one and see some experimenting from Sorensen. So excited to have Hufanga back in this one. All right, let's take a look at the Rams defense now. A lot of new faces for this one too, just because of some of the injuries that they're going through, and also the defensive line. A lot of new faces. Obviously, no more Aaron Donald for them. Intriguing guys, right? I like Jared Verse. I like Braden Fisk coming out of the draft. Byron Young, obviously a talented player as well. He got Kobe Turner. The corners, Tre'Davious White and Kobe Durant, and then the linebackers, Christian Roseboom, Troy Reeder, Cameron Curl, the safety, and Quentin Lake, the safety. And Quentin Lake comes down as a big nickel on those dime packages. So this is a group that I don't fear all that much. Obviously Aaron Donald not being in the equation is a big part of that, but also it's just a lot of inexperience, I think, in this group. And I was just kind of tinkering around Rams Reddit yesterday, and they don't have a lot of confidence in these linebackers here. And someone was saying they don't even think they should be a starting linebacker, and they probably wouldn't in any other team. So what do you see from this Rams defense? Aside from the defensive line, there's not much to be afraid of, right?
And even with the defensive line, Verse rookie, Fisk rookie.
Yeah,
so
a lot of inexperience.
One of the most difficult positions to get accustomed to, in the NFL, is the trenches, because you're going against insurance guys every day, and now you're going against pros. Now you're going against guys who can move you. So the Rams, they've given up the most yards per play in the NFL. They've given up the most. They have allowed the highest EPA per pass, second in EPA per rush. They don't blitz a lot either, so Brock should have time. They're the 16th lowest blitz rate, and they also have their 10th in sack rate. And they've the only team actually to allow more yards per pass than the 49ers are the Rams, which is kind of crazy to think. So, yeah, if you don't have linebackers, Kyle's going to pick you apart, and that's what I imagine. I know no Kittle, but this is a game where they should be able to run the ball at will. They should be able to impose their will, get Jordan Mason a ton of carries. I can see Shanahan playing a bunch of ball control. And if there was ever to feature a game where you paid the wide receiver $120 million, this is the one. So if you look at the box scores from the Rams games the last couple of weeks, they have given up over 100 yards to each of the opposing wide receiver one. Marvin Harrison had a field day last week. Probably could have had 200 yards if the game was close. And then the same thing the week prior. Just giving up explosive plays. Jameson Williams had over 100. He had 50 yards, 50-yard reception. Marvin Harrison, obviously, everybody saw the 60-plus yarder. But it's with that said, Aiyuk has a chance to go off and, score his first touchdown of the season. But it feels like a game where Mason could have close to the production that he had against the Jets. I think they'll be able to move the ball well, but it will come down to they have to be better in the red zone. That has been a struggle so far. So again, this is the team. Earlier you were talking about, hope. Don't let them hang around. This is the side of the ball, even with no McCaffrey, no Deebo, no Kittle. Not many teams can say they have a Brandon Aiyuk still. They have a Jordan Mason to turn the ball and hand the ball to. Juwan Jennings is a great matchup here, right? Tre'Davious White he's recently had 2 season-ending injuries. Kobe Durant is a guy who's a zone type of corner. Jennings, to me, is his big body is perfect for Brock Purdy. And then we're going to probably see more of Jacob Cowing. John Lynch kind of hinted at that on KMBR. I think his speed can be the explosive kind of guy that they need. So he hasn't really gotten a run at wide receiver, obviously, due to depth. They were using actually Ronnie Bell to run some routes last week. I would throw Cowing in there, man. Throw some screens, like get him some quick hitters. Like he's a 4-3 guy. Watching him in training camp, even with like the second and third team, he moves at a different speed. So I would lean on him. Maybe you're able to steal a first down here and there, but I think it just goes back to Mason. I think Mason's going to have a field day.
Yeah, we're definitely on the same page on everything I think we're expecting to see from the 49ers in this game. So, yeah, I do have Jordan Mason as a favorable. Who would have thought, right? Like through 2 weeks of the season, second in rushing yards, 5.1 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. He's seen a loaded box, the second highest of any running back, and he's still putting up these numbers, right? Which, has 54 rush yards over expected. That's third among running backs. So he can handle it, man. And this is the game where why not just run it? Because the Rams are giving up the third most rushing yards per game with 197. That's nearly 200 yards per game to running back.
The Cardinals gave up the Cardinals ran for over 200 last week.
James Conner alone had 122 yards and a touchdown. David Montgomery in week 1 had 91 yards rushing, 1 touchdown. So, yeah, I mean, this has to be a Jordan Mason game. And I think the 49ers know that, right? They'd be kind of dumb not to. So hopefully we see more Jordan Mason in this game. And, yeah, just talking about the Rams run defense, you have to run over them in this one. And, yeah, if this is the kind of game that you kind of just want to go in, get it over with, let's just get out of here, which I think it is because you got so many guys hurt. You don't want to get more guys hurt, and you just want to get this one over with. That's the kind of game you just like pound the ball the entire time and don't let up. So, yeah, hopefully we see more of that. But the other one for me, and you're just kind of talking about it, I'm expecting a big breakout game from Brandon Aiyuk, right? And I think week 2 was a good ramp up for Brandon Aiyuk because I think we saw he was getting open in this game, and it seemed like Brock Purdy knows like he has to pull the trigger on some of these throws, and hopefully that's what they're going to be working on this week. And I'm expecting a big breakout for Brandon Aiyuk in this one. If you look at what the Rams defense ranks, 39.6 defensive success rate, 14 yards allowed per reception, 8.75 yards allowed per coverage snap, 10.2 per coverage target. So, I mean, kind of what you were saying about these Rams corners, like there's no reason why Brandon Aiyuk shouldn't have a field day against these guys. I mean, I expect he's going to be getting open. And like we've been saying, Brock Purdy needs to throw him the ball. I mean, he has other options. Yes, sure. Kyle Juszczyk. I would even like to see Jordan Mason get a few balls as a check down option or just as him running a route. But Brandon Aiyuk, I think, has to be the main guy that you feature in this one, especially now we're looking at, Kittle being doubtful for this one. What was kind of interesting that something I saw, hold on 1 second. Let me pull this one up here because I just saw this one before we went live. So Nick Wagner tweeted this out, so I grabbed a little pic of it. Since the 49ers acquired running back Christian McCaffrey in 2022, Brock Purdy has been under center for a total of 10 plays without all 3 of McCaffrey, Deebo, and Kittle. On those plays, Purdy is 3 of 7 for 49 yards with no touchdowns and an interception. Half of those plays, including the interception, came in mop-up duty against Kansas City in 2022. Very, very small sample size, right? But it isn't like a super great one. And obviously, I think we know you're missing 3 key guys of your offense. Of course, there's going to be struggles, but that's why I think you need to lean on those other stars you have. I mean, this team has no shortage of stars. So, like, those other guys, one, need to step up, and Brock Purdy needs to keep them involved. So, Brandon Aiyuk, without Deebo, has had a 29% target share through 3 seasons in games without Deebo, 45% air yard share, 2.92 yards per route run. So again, just another reason to expect a big one from Brandon Aiyuk. And I would love to see Jacob Cowing in this game, just that speed element. I also think, KP, and let me know what you think here. Obviously, muff punt last week, right? You don't want him getting in his head about that, but I think it's just something that naturally happens, especially on, punt returns for young players who don't have a lot of experience with it. I think having him out there catching passes as a receiver could help him build that confidence. And when he goes out there to punt, it's like, okay, like I've been in this game, I've been catching some passes, I'm good. Like I got a rhythm going. It's going to feel like second nature at that point. I know it's two different things, but just as a confidence builder, getting him out there and having him, run some plays, some success with that could help in special teams as well.
On 100%. I'm not playing when I say I would probably give him the ball in the first series, if not the first play. Like think about that. Like mentally, I was a rookie. Like that's the only time I get a chance to touch the ball, and I blew it. Thankfully, Yidam saved him, but like he has to be thinking about that for the last week now. So I'm going to give him a quick screen. I'm going to get him matched up over the middle. And that another thing about Cowing is, despite his size, his feel for like finding soft zones in defense, like just finding the open spot, is very, very good. Like he seems more like a Jawan Jennings type, just in like a 5'9" type body. So he's very comfortable. He can hold on after the ball. So like there's a chance for him to have a big game if he is involved. I'm glad you put the target share up there for Aiyuk though, without Deebo. And to that Knicks tweet, that was against like the Cleveland Browns, Jim Schwartz, who was like peak, has Kyle's number. Like for whatever reason, those defenses perform really well against the 49ers, and they didn't get a chance to prep without those three, right? Like those, Deebo went down in the first part. I think CMC was down in that game too. He was on and off. So I would also kind of say, in a weird way, like those injuries are going to help the 49ers in the long run, because they haven't had a chance to really get Aiyuk implemented into the offense. And now you have no choice, right? Like as much as we're talking about Cowing, you're going to throw the ball to Aiyuk, right? You paid him all this money because you know what he's capable of, because he proved what he's capable of. The Rams are giving up an explosive play at a very high rate, actually more so than anybody in the NFL if you just look at the EPA numbers. So I think, man, this is a game where I'm taking shots down the field. I am being very aggressive. I am leaning on him. And if he doesn't have 10-plus targets in this game, I would be shocked. He's going to have an opportunity to, like, he can run by Tre'Davious White. This is not Tre'Davious White from 2019, 2018, those all-pro seasons. So I really do think it's going to be a game where Aiyuk's stat line could look something like Deebo's last week, where it was 8 for 110, and probably even more than that. So I'm going to lean on Aiyuk early and often. I'm going to get Mason involved, probably look at Cowing for underneath throws, and then Jawan Jennings, as he always does, right? Like that fourth down reception that he had last week was a thing of beauty. So I'm glad to see them leaning on Jawan Jennings in that intermediate 15 to 20-yard range. Keep that up. There's no reason that should change, because he's always going to be open, and he's a big body target. Even if he's not open, you can throw him open. They have plenty of talent. It's crazy to say that after the three guys that we're talking about missing. Scoring points, as ignorant as it might sound, should still not be a problem.
No, I mean, you're 100% right. Like, I don't even think it's being like disrespectful to the Rams. I mean, I think it's just the state that they're in. And as a team that's as stacked as the 49ers are, like, you still have to take advantage of that, even if you are shorthanded, because you still have so many stars on this team again. So no excuses for this team. Now, we were talking about Jacob Cowing, right? Isaac Guerendo, he had the one carry last week. It felt like Kyle Shanahan wasn't too hard on him, when he was asked about Guerendo's carry, and kind of just said, hey, like a lot of guys kind of struggle with that vision, or just like waiting for their blocks. I kind of feel like this also could be a game for Guerendo if Kyle, wishes to ease him in, right? Get him in there. This could be a confidence building kind of game for Guerendo too, because I just think the 49ers offensive line, the run blocking should have its way more often than not in this one. So it'd be nice to get Guerendo some positive run as well.
So like in his defense, he saw and he's seen Mason for 2 games press the line of scrimmage and cut it back. So what does he do in the only carry? Press the line of scrimmage and cut it back, probably assuming that it was there before it actually happened. So I wouldn't blame Guerendo too much for that. But I think that is a good point, especially like talking about getting him involved in the screen game. Haven't really seen that a lot, but I don't know if you're going to see that against the Rams, because they're just not an aggressive unit by nature. But if you do want to get Garrindo in the open field, I think we're going to see some outside runs or some, like we said, some screens or a swing pass out of the backfield. Let's see that 4-3 speed out in the open, because the last time we saw it was as a kick returner.
Yeah, and also the 49ers haven't done a lot of play action either, which is a little unusual. So maybe this is the game with the run game going strong as we expect in this one, that they can get some explosives off of play action. But, look, even with Kittle, even with Deebo, even with Christian McCaffrey out in this one, I'm calling this one a dub for the 49ers. 27-19, I think, is my score prediction, even without Kittle in this game. The over-under for this one is 43.5. 49ers, of course, favored by 6.5 points. But, yeah, I'm sticking with 27-19. Have you thought about a score prediction for this one?
I think this bad boy is going under. I think it's an opportunity for the defense to kind of flex their muscles a bit, force the Rams into quite a few 3-and-outs, make Stafford uncomfortable. Man, I kind of feel for Stafford not having all those weapons, right? But he's not the only quarterback in the NFL who's missing his targets, his top targets. I mean, shoot, look at the other side of the ball. Purdy is too. I think it's going to be very low scoring. I think it's going to be like abnormally lower scoring, because again, like last year, week 2, 30-23. The Rams are going up and down the field in the first half. The 49ers, they didn't in the first half, but in the second half, they came alive. But I think it's going to be something like 23-6 or something. I'll go with 23-6.
I like that. There's no reason the 49ers shouldn't dominate, so yes. I think that's reasonable. All right. Well, for everyone that tuned in, thank you guys so much. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Audio listeners, leave a rating, leave a review. By the way, no instant reaction show for me this weekend because I will be moving. Lots of fun. So I might not get to watch the game.
Nobody
live.
Ever.
Yeah. So I probably won't get to watch the game live. So I won't be doing an instant reaction, but I'll be back on Monday with Weston for the Player of the Week episode. But for now, for me and KP, have a good rest of your Friday, folks. Peace.